Have you ever been disrespected, so sharply, so unexpectedly, that your entire body flared up before your mind could even catch up? Picture this. You're in a room full of people. The conversation is flowing, laughter warm and effortless. And then, one remark. One perfectly timed jab. It's subtle enough to sound like a joke, but sharp enough to slice through you. The room doesn't freeze, but you do. You feel your heart pounding like a drum, not from fear, from fire, from instinct. You want to say something, anything, retaliate, reclaim your power, because silence feels like surrender. But what if it's not? What if silence is the strike? What if stillness is how you win? This is what we explore in Stay Quiet After Disrespect, vertical bar, Stoicism, the inner war strategy. Not through suppression, but through precision. Through the discipline of not giving your peace away every time someone throws a stone. The Stoics didn't teach us to ignore pain. They taught us to outgrow it, to walk through the noise untouched, to respond to the world, not with fire, but with mastery. And if you've ever left a room without saying a word and still felt stronger, then you already know. Some battles aren't won with words. They're won with who you choose to become. Let's begin the strategy of the inner war, the Stoic way. 1. The first flame. When fire rises in your chest. There are moments in life that don't announce themselves. No signs, no warnings, just emotion, rising like a quiet storm, sudden and intense. You're there, moving through your day in a pocket of calm, when someone says something that slices through it all. Maybe it's a sneer, a dismissive tone, a comment that's not overtly cruel but sharp enough to draw blood. And something rises in your chest, not sorrow, not fear but fire. It's fast, your heartbeat quickens, your breath shortens, your whole body readies itself for war before your mind can catch up. You want to respond, to snap back, to defend yourself. It's primal. And in that split second so brief you could almost miss it, you feel yourself inching toward the edge, toward saying or doing something you'll later wish you hadn't. But even in that pressure, there's a space, thin as a blade, but it's there. A moment that invites you not to react, but to witness. A small window that says, pause, take a breath, and return to yourself. Let me give you a picture. You're in a team meeting. You've worked late nights all week to prepare your part. You've rehearsed. You've double-checked every slide. And halfway through, your manager cuts you off with a sarcastic remark. Something subtle, but everyone hears it. Everyone feels it. A few people glance away awkwardly. One person smirks. And you, your chest tightens, your jaw locks, your face grows warm. Inside, a voice screams, "Don't let this slide. Push back. Show them you're not someone to be over." You imagine slamming your hand on the table, raising your voice, defending your dignity, and for a moment, you nearly do. But then, something holds you back. Not fear, not passivity, but clarity. A breath. A pause. And in that pause, you choose not to give them your fire. That's not weakness, that's power. And it's exactly what Marcus Aurelius meant when he said, "How much more grievous are the consequences of anger than the causes of it?" We always feel justified in the moment. We always think we're protecting something, our pride, our worth. But anger is a thief. It never takes just the moment. It takes the peace that comes after, the relationships, the respect, the self-trust. And once it's spent, it rarely gives anything back. Stoicism doesn't tell you not to feel anger. It simply asks you, can you see it clearly before it consumes you? Because the one who can stand in the heat and not act from it, that person is free. You don't have to be cold. You don't have to suppress your fire. You only need to hold it long enough that it doesn't burn what matters. So the next time that fire rises in your chest, try the simplest thing. Don't rush to speak. Don't rush to act. Feel it. Observe it. Let it flare within you without letting it escape. You might be surprised to find sometimes the most powerful response is silence and presence. 2. The trigger trap. When your mind isn't yours anymore. Why do you always overreact? You're so sensitive. He says it with that tone. Not concerned, not curious, just cold. And in that moment you feel it, the switch flip. Not on your face, not in your voice yet, but somewhere deeper. Inside your chest, your breath stutters. Your thoughts sharpen into heat. You've been baited. Again. And you know it. There's a trap hidden in moments like these. Subtle, invisible, but deadly real. The cruelest part? It only works because you help it work. The moment you allow someone to trigger you, you hand them something precious. Not just your voice, but your presence, your peace, your power. You've given them the remote. Imagine it's someone holding a remote, labeled with all your buttons. Anger, insecurity, pride, shame. And with one smirk, one word, one perfectly timed jab, they press play, and you perform. As expected, this isn't just philosophy, it's neuroscience. In psychology, they call it amygdala hijack. It's what happens when the emotional brain overrides the thinking brain. When your amygdala detects a threat, real or imagined, it floods your system with adrenaline. You react fast, you shout, you lash out, you cut deep. Not because you're logical, but because your brain thinks it's surviving. But this isn't a battlefield. It's a Tuesday meeting, a family dinner, a text message at 11 p.m. Still, your system doesn't know the difference. And unless you train it, it never will. The Stoics knew this long before we had brain scans. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself in Meditations, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." That strength doesn't start after the storm. It begins here inside the rising fire, when you remember that no one gets to decide who you are unless you let them. Let me paint you another picture. You're 12. Your father is yelling at you over something you barely understand. You feel your body stiffen, your throat close, but you don't say anything. You learn that silence protects you. Years later, someone raises their voice in a boardroom, and suddenly you're not 35 anymore. You're 12. The body remembers, the brain replays, and unless you're conscious, you react from the child, not the adult. That's the real trap. Triggers don't just control the moment, they hijack your story. They speak from old wounds you never named, but now you can. The next time you feel the surge, the heat rising, the breath tightening, pause. Not to repress, but to return. Breathe, blink, step back into now. The person in front of you isn't your past, and your reaction doesn't have to be either. When the moment passes, write. Name 3 times in your life when you reacted too quickly and what it cost. Not to blame yourself, but to reclaim yourself, because only when you study the trap do you stop walking into it. And ask yourself this: each time I lose myself in anger, what exactly am I trying to protect, and what do I keep losing in return? 3. The art of response. You are not a puppet of emotion. I'm not going to say anything I'll regret, not because I don't feel it, but because I finally know who I want to be. There is a moment barely noticeable when something small cuts deep. Someone interrupts you in front of others. Someone close throws a jab that doesn't sound angry, but feels designed to make you feel small. You feel it inside your chest. Heat, pressure, the urgent push to retaliate. And most people do. not because they choose to, but because they never knew they could choose anything else. This is the difference between a reaction and a response. To react is to surrender your self-control to the moment. To act without thinking, without pausing, without presence. To respond is to reclaim that moment. To observe your emotion without being enslaved by it. To pause long enough for your wisdom to enter the room. Let me show you what that difference looks like in action. Two professionals, same age, same office, both present ideas during a meeting. Midway through, the manager critiques their work not helpfully, but condescendingly. It's subtle, but intentional. The whole room feels the shift. The first man reacts. He snaps, raises his voice, defends his work passionately, but the room grows cold. Colleagues become quiet. Afterward, they don't make eye contact. He replays the event all evening and calls it standing up for himself. But beneath that, regret. The second man feels the same sting but does something different. He breathes, he listens, he notes the tone, the intention, but chooses not to let it define him. He lets the insult pass, finishes his part with calm, and follows up privately afterward. Later that evening, he replays the moment too, but this time, he feels peace. Two men, Zame insult. Different stories. One defended his pride, the other protected his power. This is the foundation of Stoicism. Epictetus wrote, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." Discourses, Book 1.1. Marcus Aurelius echoed, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Meditations, Book 12.3.6. These weren't just quotes, they were battle-tested truths from men who lived through exile, betrayal, and war. Modern psychology, especially through rational emotive behavior therapy, REBT, affirms this ancient insight. It teaches that emotional distress rarely comes from the event itself, but from the belief we attach to it, the story we tell ourselves. Something happens. Someone disrespects you. You instinctively believe it means you're not good enough, that you're being attacked, that you must fight back. And from that belief, you explode, withdraw, spiral. But what if the belief is flawed? What if the insult says more about them than it does about you? What if it means nothing unless you give it meaning? This is the power of response, to notice the trigger without pulling it. You don't have to suppress what you feel. Stoicism doesn't preach emotional numbness. It asks for emotional clarity. You're allowed to feel the flame so long as you don't throw it at someone else. Here's something to try. The next time you feel anger rise, don't respond right away. Give yourself 10 minutes. Sit with the discomfort. Take out your phone or notebook and write not what you want to say, but what you're actually feeling. Trace the belief behind the anger. Ask, what am I telling myself about this situation? And is it true? You may be surprised at how many beliefs aren't facts but inherited scripts you've never questioned. Once you've slowed the emotion, decide how to respond. Sometimes silence is power. Sometimes a question is stronger than a rebuttal. Sometimes the best thing you can do is walk away with your dignity intact, because real strength doesn't look like dominance. It looks like presence, measured, intentional, untouchable. You don't need to match the disrespect you receive. You don't need to defend your worth to those who can't see it. And you are not a puppet of emotion, unless you choose to be. I don't answer right away, because I am busy rewriting who I am. Now pause for a moment. Think back to a time you reacted too quickly. What did it cost you? And more importantly, what might your life look like if you gave yourself 10 more seconds and chose to respond instead? Fourth, you disrespect yourself most. the hidden wound beneath your reactions. Sometimes the one who disrespects you the most is the part of you still unconvinced that you deserve respect. It's easy to focus outward, to point the finger. They crossed the line. They made me feel this way. They disrespected me. And maybe they did. But here's a harder question most people never stop to ask. Why did it get to me so deeply? Yes, words have power, but only the ones that land on unhealed places. If someone calls you something that has nothing to do with your truth, you laugh, you brush it off, it doesn't stick. But when the insult finds a soft spot, something unresolved, something fragile, it doesn't just sting, it reactivates everything you've buried. And that's when the real damage begins, not from what they said, but from what you believed about it. Think of this. A close friend makes a joke at dinner, something subtle about how you always need reassurance. Everyone laughs. You laugh too. But later that night, the moment replays in your mind, not because it was cruel, but because some part of you already wonders if it's true. That's the wound. It wasn't the joke, it was the echo it awakened. Sometimes the disrespect that hurts most isn't what comes from others, it's what we echo inside ourselves. The voice that says, maybe they're right, maybe I'm not enough, maybe I deserve this. And we don't just hear that voice, we act from it, we defend from it, we attack from it. That's not strength, that's self-sabotage. In psychology, this is what we call the inner critic. It's the internal voice formed through shame, insecurity, unmet expectations, often rooted in childhood or formative moments. And it becomes the lens through which we experience all present-day conflict. When someone challenges us, we don't just face them, we face ourselves, our younger selves, our doubting selves. And if we haven't done the work to heal that, we lash out not to protect our worth, but to convince ourselves it exists. Think about it. The people who are the most reactive, the ones who explode at the smallest sign of disrespect, are often those who feel the most unworthy deep down. And they confuse volume with value, emotion with evidence. If I yell loud enough, maybe I'll drown out the doubt. But it never works. Stoicism calls us back from this spiral. It says, pause, observe, ask not only what happened but why it struck where it did. Because strength isn't built by silencing others, it's built by finally listening to yourself. So here's a practice one most people avoid because it's not easy. Write a letter to yourself. Not the polished version of you, not the person who has it all together, but the part of you that still feels wounded, unheard, disrespected. Ask them, how have I been hurting you by the way I react? What parts of me have I been trying to prove, be shouting, blaming, attacking? And then listen, without judgment. Because healing doesn't begin with blame, it begins with awareness. You may find that the person you've been trying to protect is the one you've been hurting the most. Self-respect doesn't start with confrontation. It starts with quiet, with the courage to say, I see you, I believe in you, and I will no longer fight to prove that you matter, because you already do. You don't have to answer every insult. You don't have to chase respect from people who've never learned how to give it. But you do have to stop disrespecting yourself by letting them define you. So ask yourself, in a world that constantly disrespects, am I defending myself? Or am I slowly teaching myself that I'm not worth defending at all? 5. The inner triumph, the only victory that matters. He who cannot be provoked cannot be controlled. There is a kind of power that doesn't need to announce itself. It doesn't wear armor or roar from a podium. It doesn't swing wildly or grasp for applause. It simply is steady, unshaken, unmoved by chaos. It lives in stillness, in silence, in the space between being provoked and choosing to remain whole. And it's in that space that something extraordinary happens. You stop fighting the world, and you start mastering yourself. To the Stoics, this is the ultimate victory. Not conquering cities or crowds or enemies, but conquering the one person who has always stood in your way. You, Marcus Aurelius said, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. Strength, not in retaliation, but in restraint. Not in thunder, but in thunder held back. The Stoic doesn't suppress his fire, he directs it. The Stoic doesn't hide from insult or refuses to be owned by it. He sees the game for what it is and chooses not to play. Imagine a fighter, trained for years, disciplined, powerful. He stands across from someone younger, louder, eager to prove a point. The younger man pushes, mocks, provokes, but the fighter doesn't move. He doesn't take the bait. His silence isn't fear, it's control. And everyone watching knows, the one who doesn't flinch is the one with nothing to prove. Picture a CEO. She's under fire in a boardroom, accused, questioned, disrespected. All eyes are on her. The room waits for the explosion, but she stays composed. Still, unbothered. Not because she's cold, but because she's decided. Her energy is too valuable to spend proving herself to people who confuse noise with leadership. That is power, not the kind that dominates, but the kind that elevates. And then there's Maya Angelou. As a child, she was silenced by trauma. For nearly 5 years, she didn't speak. But that silence wasn't surrender. It was transformation. She turned her pain into poetry, her restraint into rhythm. Instead of lashing out, she rose through words, through grace. Her memoir, I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings, became a classic. She wrote screenplays, spoke at a presidential inauguration, and became the voice of dignity for millions. And what made her unforgettable wasn't just her eloquent sight, was her restraint, her refusal to let anger shape her story. She didn't react to her past. She responded to it with strength, clarity, and poise. She showed us, you don't need to strike back to rise. Sometimes the fiercest triumph is the one no one sees but everyone feels. This is the inner triumph. Epictetus said, no man is free who is not master of himself. That mastery isn't something you find. It's something you forge through repetition, reflection, and resistance to the easy response. Because the easy response is almost always noise, reaction, ego. The hard thing is to pause, to hold, to let the insult pass through without nesting inside you. That's not weakness, that's clarity. And clarity is power. Every time you pause instead of striking back, every time you breathe through the fire, every time you choose not to dignify the disrespect, you are not just avoiding conflict, you are proving that you've evolved beyond needing it. Let them provoke, let them push, let them call your stillness silence, your restraint weakness. They don't know what it costs to be calm in a world that runs on chaos. They don't understand that your refusal to engage isn't surrender, it's sovereignty. You don't need to dominate the conversation. You don't need to win the debate. You don't need to correct every misjudgment or chase every slight. You only need to finish each moment with your dignity intact. Because dignity, once owned, doesn't beg, it doesn't argue, it simply stands. And that is the inner triumph. The quiet, unshakable knowledge that you have nothing left to prove because you've already won the only battle that ever mattered. I don't need to defeat anyone as long as I don't lose to myself. Say that again until you believe it, until it becomes the breath you hold when the fire rises, until it becomes the stillness you choose when chaos surrounds you, until you rise not because they expected it, but because it was always yours to do so. 6. Don't feed the fire. How stillness extinguishes chaos. Anger is a fire, and every time you react, every sharp word, every defensive post, every flinch, you throw more wood into the flame. It grows not because it needs to, it grows because you feed it. That's what most people don't realize. You don't have to scream to make a point. You don't have to prove you're unshaken by raising your voice. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is let it burn out on its own. You don't have to put out the fire. You just have to stop fueling it. Not everything demands a reply. Not every insult is worth a word. The Stoics knew this deeply. Withdraw from the noise, Epictetus urged. You don't owe the world a reaction. You are not a machine wired to respond. You are a conscious being with the power to choose what deserves your energy and what dies without it. Think about the last argument you saw online. Two strangers shouting into comment boxes, each reply louder than the last. Nobody wins, nobody learns. It's not a conversation. It's a bonfire fueled by pride and Wi-Fi. And the moment someone decides not to reply, the flames start to fade. Silence has that effect. It cools what ego keeps alive. Now zoom in. A family dinner. Someone makes a snide remark. You feel it hit. Everyone turns. The room shifts. There's a choice. Escalate or observe. Maybe you raise your eyebrows. Maybe you smile slightly. But you say nothing. And somehow, the air settles. Your silence doesn't feel like surrender, it feels like strength. Or think of the group chat. That passive-aggressive message. That sentence crafted to get under your skin. You read it, you feel it, and you do nothing. Just seen. No reply. No fuel. Let them wonder. Let them sit in the echo of what they tried to stir. Because silence isn't weakness, it's a filter. It shows what passes through you and what no longer deserves entry. That's what fire can't survive. Neglect. No oxygen, no heat, and it dies. Not with a bang, but with a quiet fade. The next time someone pushes you, insults you, tries to bait you into reaction, remember this. You don't have to win the fire. Just stop feeding it. Try this. Create a trigger map. On a blank page, write 5 situations that often ignite your anger moments when you tend to react. Maybe it's being ignored, criticized, or interrupted. Under each one, note the last time it happened, how you reacted, and how that reaction made you feel afterward. Then ask, what would have happened if I stayed silent? The goal isn't to erase the fire, but to understand where it begins so you stop lighting it before it spreads. Awareness is your fire break, and sometimes clarity is all it takes to protect your peace, because maybe the most powerful thing you can say is nothing at all. 7. The currency of energy. Emotions aren't free. Every angry word is a coin you'll never get back. Imagine this. You wake up every morning with a wallet full of emotional currency. Let's say it's 100 coins. That's all you get for the day, no matter what happens, no matter who triggers you. Every time you argue with someone who won't listen, swipe through negativity, rehearse a conflict in your head, or snap at someone who doesn't deserve it, you spend coin after coin, reaction after reaction, until suddenly it's 4 p.m. and you're emotionally bankrupt, nothing left for what truly matters. And you wonder why you feel exhausted. The truth is, we don't just lose energy from doing too much, we lose it from caring about the wrong things. We pour it into opinions we can't change, people we'll never please, and drama that doesn't belong to us. Modern psychology calls it ego depletion, the gradual draining of your mental and emotional strength through unnecessary decision-making and emotional overexertion. Stoicism had the same message long before science caught up. Don't waste energy on what you can't control. Or as Marcus Aurelius reminded himself in Meditations, you always have the option of having no opinion. There is never any need to get worked up. That wasn't a call to coldness, it was a call to conserve the only wealth that truly matters, your clarity. Think about it. You only have so much in the tank. So the question becomes, where do you spend your emotional coins? On petty arguments? On headlines designed to provoke? On trying to control someone else's bad day? Or do you invest it in what uplifts you? Your work, your peace, your craft, your people. Your energy is not infinite. It's not free, and it's not replaceable. So if you're tired not just physically, but mentally, emotionally, spiritually, it's worth asking, who or what is spending your energy without permission? Here's a simple practice. At the end of today, write down 3 moments that drained you. Then next to each, ask, did this deserve my energy, or did it just take it? Then write 1 alternative response you'll try next time, one that protects your currency instead of throwing it away. This is what emotional mastery looks like, not never feeling, but choosing when and where your emotions get to live. Because the strongest people aren't the ones who don't care, they're the ones who care selectively, strategically, wisely. So the next time you feel the urge to spend your peace on something fleeting, ask yourself, what is this really worth? And if it costs your clarity, your calm, your day, it's too expensive. I invest my emotions into what lifts me up, not what drags me down. 8. The silent strike. When stillness wounds louder than words. Silence makes others hear the noise inside their own mind. There are moments when silence doesn't just defend you, it defines you. It doesn't shield you from the world, it draws a line in it. A moment when not reacting says more than any clever comeback ever could. Because in that pause, that stillness, you stop fighting to win and start standing to remain whole. You're at a dinner party, conversation flows, glasses clink, people laugh not too loud, not too forced. You used to be close to someone who knows exactly what you've worked to grow beyond throws a line across the table. I guess some people reinvent themselves every year. Must be exhausting keeping up the act. It's a joke, lightly delivered, coated in charm, but everyone feels the edge. Everyone hears the intent. The group chuckles, politely, uncomfortably, then quiet. They turn to you. They expect you to snap, to play the game, maybe to rise or sink. Either would do, but you do neither. You pause, you look up, calm. You don't smile, you don't speak. You just meet their eyes and then move on, sipping your drink, turning to another guest. And that is the moment everything shifts. The jab lingers in the air, but without your energy, it withers. The speaker glances down. Their confidence cracks. They know they didn't land a punch, they just exposed something in themselves. Insecurity, pettiness, need. And the people watching, they feel it too. They notice that you didn't need to fight back because there was nothing to defend. Your silence didn't shrink you, it framed you in strength. This is the silent strike. It's not a delay before you speak. It's the decision not to. It's the high ground you take, not out of fear, but out of clarity, out of sovereignty. You are no longer a character in their script. You rewrote the scene by refusing to follow their cue. The Stoics lived for moments like these, not because they were cold or indifferent, but because they understood one truth. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Or as Marcus Aurelius reminded himself in Meditations, you always have the option of having no opinion. There is never any need to get worked up. Silence is that option, exercised with discipline, not passivity but poise. When you don't react, You reclaim authorship of your own energy. You starve the conflict of oxygen. You let your stillness become the mirror in which they must see themselves. And that reflection, it hits harder than any words could. Because in a world addicted to speed, noise, and validation, stillness is power, silence is presence, the kind that unsettles not because it's weak, but because it cannot be pulled. So the next time someone tries to drag you into their drama, bait you into their storm, or paint you back into a past you've outgrown, respond. Let your calm become their discomfort. Let your composure become their consequence. Because if your silence makes them hear themselves more clearly, if it makes the room see who truly holds the ground, then maybe you've already said everything that needed to be said. 9. Transcendent wisdom, the power that no one can take. Peace doesn't come from being respected. It comes from no longer being offendable. There is a freedom more powerful than dominance, a strength more durable than revenge. It's not the power to fight back, it's the power to no longer be moved, to feel the sting of an insult and let it dissolve before it reaches your center, to walk through a storm and remain dry within. You weren't born with that strength. None of us were. It's not instinct, it's transformation, because your instincts wanted to bite back, to win, to prove. But your practice taught you to breathe, to choose, to rise. This entire journey, every pause, every held breath, every silent moment wasn't about suppression, it was about mastery. And that mastery has a name. In psychology, they call it equanimity, the state of emotional balance, so rooted that no praise inflates you, no insult deflates you. You no longer live in reaction to the world. You stand in relation to it. And when you do, you become what the Stoics described over centuries ago, a free person. Not free because you can say anything, but because nothing can shake who you are. Or as Marcus Aurelius reminded himself in Meditations, waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be one. And that's what silence truly becomes, not a tactic, not even a shield, but an embodiment. You are no longer trying to win the moment. You are living as someone who has nothing left to prove. You stop asking, how can I make them respect me? And instead you ask, who am I when I'm no longer trying to be seen? That shift changes everything. You begin investing your energy into building, not defending, into growing, not reacting, into living, not performing. And in that quiet, something profound happens. You become the calm that others crave, the mirror that makes others reflect, the presence that makes noise unnecessary. Because here's the truth. You don't need to respond to earn respect. You just need to stop giving your peace away for free. When you choose stillness, you stop letting the outside world auction off your emotions. And maybe, just maybe, that's the final frontier, not rising above disrespect, but becoming someone who cannot be disrespected because there's nothing in you that can be shaken by it. So write it somewhere, not for the world to see, but for your own mind to remember. I choose silence to protect my peace, not to please the world. I choose restraint not because I'm weak, but because I'm finally free. And if this message spoke to you, if you've ever held back a reaction, stood in your power, and walked away taller, leave a trace, not for validation, not to be praised, but to remind someone reading the comments right now that they're not alone. If you've ever been disrespected and chose silences, share your story below. Not to complain, but to remind someone out there, calm is possible. You are not alone. This is the end of the war inside, and the beginning of something far greater. Silence is not surrender. It is strength in its purest form. When you stay quiet after being disrespected, you're not shrinking. You're choosing to rise above. You're showing the world and yourself that your emotions are yours to govern, not theirs to provoke. That is the essence of Stoicism. Not to numb yourself from the world, but to move through it untouched. To train your mind so well that not even disrespect can move you from your center. If this message spoke to something in you, if you've ever held back a reaction, chose stillness over chaos, and felt stronger because of it, share your story in the comments. Not to complain, but to remind someone else who's watching right now that they're not alone. Your voice, even in silence, can still inspire. And if you found value in this video, let us know by hitting like, sharing it with someone who needs it, and subscribing for more content on Stoicism, inner strength, and self-mastery. We're building something here and you're a part of it. Thank you for being here, for choosing growth, for choosing calm over chaos. And I'll leave you with a question. What if your greatest power is your ability not to respond? Or as Marcus Aurelius reminded himself in Meditations, if you are disturbed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it, and this you have the power to revoke at any moment. Stay still, stay strong, stay free. Until next time.